She was just cleaning rooms until her Dutch phone call reached the ears of a hidden millionaire. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us get back to our main character. The soft hum of a vacuum cleaner echoed down the polished hallway of the Grand Haven Hotel. It was just past 10 on a quiet Tuesday morning, and Lina Vermeer was finishing her third room of the day. She wiped the edge of a marble counter until it shone, her reflection faintly visible in its smooth surface. Her uniform smelled faintly of detergent and lemon polish. The air conditioning hummed above a gentle whisper over the muted luxury around her. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her pocket. Without thinking, she answered in Dutch, her native tongue, the words quick and casual. Ja, ik kom straks naar huis, mam. Ik haal medicijnen voor je maak je geen zorgen. She smiled softly as she spoke, telling her mother she would stop by the pharmacy after work. What she did not realize was that she was not alone. From the adjoining suite, the door stood slightly ajar. A man, tall, dark-haired, and sharply dressed, had paused mid-step with his phone in hand. He looked toward the sound of her voice, understanding every word. His name was Adrian Cole. To the hotel staff, he was just another wealthy guest from overseas. In reality, he was the CEO of Cole Capital Group, the very company negotiating to purchase this entire hotel chain. He watched silently as Lina continued speaking, unaware of his presence. Her tone was warm, affectionate, completely at odds with the sterile professionalism of the building around her. Adrian's lips curved slightly. He had sat through meetings all morning, numbers, margins, profit forecasts, but nothing had felt as alive as this young woman's simple, genuine conversation. Lina ended the call and tucked her phone away. She turned to adjust the sheets on the bed, humming softly under her breath. Her hands were small, careful, practiced. She had done this hundreds of times, yet today felt unusually heavy. The bills were piling up at home, her mother's medicine had doubled in price, and her student debt from her unfinished translation program still followed her like a shadow. The door creaked. She froze. Adrian stepped forward, his voice smooth but calm. "Excuse me," he said in English. "You do not have to stop. I just needed a file I left here." Lina's cheeks flushed pink. "Oh, I am sorry, sir. I did not know anyone was still inside. I thought the suite was empty." He nodded slightly. "It is fine. I was just on a call in the next room." His gaze softened. "Dutch, right? You speak it beautifully." She blinked in surprise. "You understood that?" Every word he said with a small smile. "It is rare to hear it spoken here." For a second, neither of them moved. The soft rustle of the curtains, the faint hum of city traffic outside, it all faded into the quiet space between them. Lina tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and looked down, embarrassed. "Sorry about that. It was just my mother. She worries too much." "Then she must love you very much," he replied, his tone gentle. Something about the way he said it, without arrogance, without the distant formality she had come to expect from guests, made her heart stutter. She nodded awkwardly, gathering her cleaning cloths. "I should finish the other rooms." "Of course," he said. "Have a good day, Miss Vermeer," she said softly. "Lina Vermeer." He repeated it under his breath as if memorizing the name. "Thank you, Miss Vermeer." As she left the room, her footsteps echoed down the hallway. She tried to shake off the strange warmth in her chest. Guests never noticed her before, never looked at her like that. To them she was invisible. But the man in suite 709 had spoken her name like it mattered. Inside the suite, Adrian stood still for a long moment. Then he glanced at the folder on the table, untouched. He exhaled slowly, realizing he had forgotten entirely why he came back. His mind replayed the cadence of her Dutch words, the care in her tone, the unpolished sincerity. He had built an empire by studying people's motives, but this woman, she was unreadable in the best possible way. By the time Lina reached the service elevator, she could still feel his gaze lingering in her thoughts. She did not know that the next morning that same man would ask the hotel manager for her full name and request to see her again. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the narrow windows of Lina's small apartment. The sound of distant church bells mingled with the low hum of traffic. She poured hot water over a chipped mug of instant coffee, the steam fogging the glass above the sink. Her uniform hung neatly on the chair beside her, pressed and ready. Her mother sat in an armchair by the window knitting quietly, her swollen hands wrapped in fingerless gloves. "Do not worry, Mom," Lina said softly in Dutch. "I will pick up your medicine tonight. Work might run late again." Her mother smiled, tired but proud. "You work too hard, sweetheart." "I have to," Lina replied. She smiled, but her eyes showed the weight of every overdue bill stacked on the kitchen table. By the time she reached the hotel, the lobby was alive with morning bustle. The scent of roasted coffee from the cafe mixed with the faint perfume of luxury candles. Lina clocked in, tied her hair into a bun, and joined the housekeeping line for assignments. The supervisor, Mrs. Carter, handed her a clipboard. "Suite 709 again, Vermeer. The guest requested you personally." Lina blinked, confused. "Requested me," Mrs. Carter nodded, tapping her pen. "Yes. Mr. Adrian Cole. He said you did excellent work yesterday. Try not to keep him waiting." Lina's heart skipped. She remembered his calm voice, the way he had smiled when he spoke Dutch. It was strange for guests to notice her, let alone request her. As she rode the elevator up, her palms felt slightly damp. When she reached the 7th floor, the corridor was silent except for the muffled click of her shoes. She hesitated before knocking. "Housekeeping," she said softly. "Come in," his voice answered. The suite looked brighter than yesterday, sunlight pouring through the wide glass windows that overlooked the city. Adrian stood by the desk, dressed in a crisp white shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms. A laptop sat open beside a steaming cup of espresso. "Good morning, Miss Vermeer," he greeted warmly. "I hope I am not keeping you from your schedule." "No, sir," she replied quickly. "I just did not expect that I would ask for you again." He smiled gently. "I needed someone who speaks Dutch. A few documents came in from the Amsterdam office. Perhaps you can help me translate them." Lina's brows lifted in surprise. I am not a professional translator." "Then consider this practice," he said. "I will pay for your time." She hesitated, glancing at the papers. The words felt familiar, comforting. Slowly she nodded. "All right." As she read aloud, her voice steady but soft, Adrian leaned against the desk, watching her. Her pronunciation was precise, her tone melodic. When she stumbled over a phrase, she bit her lip in concentration. He found himself smiling again, something he rarely did in meetings or boardrooms. After an hour, she handed back the documents. "Finished," she said, a little breathless. "Thank you," he replied. "You are talented, Miss Vermeer. Have you studied languages?" "I did," she said quietly. "Before my father passed, I was studying translation. But I had to stop." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes life puts our dreams on hold, not because we failed, but because timing has its own rhythm." She met his gaze for a moment, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "You sound like someone who knows that feeling." "I do," he said simply. A soft silence settled between them. The air seemed to hum with something unspoken. Finally, she gathered her cleaning supplies. "I should get back to work." "Before you go," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He handed her a small envelope embossed with the hotel's logo. "This is for the translation. It is not much, but you earned it." "I cannot accept tips for translations, sir," she said, pushing it back gently. "It was not part of my job." "Then consider it a thank you," he said. "For yesterday, too. You reminded me what real sincerity sounds like." She hesitated again, then accepted it quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." As she turned to leave, his voice followed her. "Lina, do you always talk to your mother in Dutch?" She paused at the door, smiling softly. "Yes. It makes her feel at home." Adrian nodded. "That is a beautiful thing." When she stepped back into the hallway, her heart felt oddly light. She opened the envelope on the elevator ride down. Inside was a folded note that read, "Never stop using your gift, AC," and 2 crisp $100 bills. Her breath caught. It was more than a tip, it was encouragement. For the first time in years, someone had seen her not as invisible staff, but as a person with a voice worth hearing. Back in his suite, Adrian closed his laptop, staring out the window at the skyline. He could not explain why he had asked for her. Maybe it was the sound of her voice. Maybe it was how she spoke with quiet dignity. All he knew was that the echo of her Dutch words lingered long after she was gone. The next few days passed quietly, but Lina could not shake the memory of the note in that envelope. She kept it inside her sketchbook, the one she carried everywhere, though she rarely had time to draw anymore. At night, when her mother slept, She would trace the embossed initials on the paper, wondering what kind of man wrote something so simple yet so kind. At the hotel, whispers began to spread among the staff. Mr. Cole was extending his stay. Some said he was a potential investor. Others claimed he was scouting the property for a merger. Lina kept her head down, focusing on her work, trying not to listen. Still, every time she passed the 7th floor, her pulse quickened. On Thursday morning, she found a message clipped to her assignment board: deliver, a fresh arrangement to suite 709. Her hands hesitated on the paper. She told herself it was just work. But when she entered the suite, she found Adrian standing by the window again, speaking softly into his phone. He turned as she placed the vase on the coffee table. "Miss Vermeer," he said, his voice calm but pleased. "I was hoping to see you." Lina straightened. "Good morning, sir. I brought the flowers as requested." "They are perfect," he said. "Would you mind staying for a moment? I could use your help once more." Her instinct was to decline. She had other rooms to clean, but the warmth in his eyes made her nod. "Of course." He motioned toward a set of folders on the desk. "I need to understand these contracts. They are written partly in Dutch, partly in legal English. I can read both, but not well enough to catch nuance." Lina moved closer, scanning the pages. The lines were dense with legal phrasing, but she explained them clearly, line by line. Adrian listened with quiet focus, occasionally asking about a word or idiom. When she translated a phrase about trust and fair cooperation, he smiled faintly. "That one seems important," he said. "It is," she replied. "It means both sides act with integrity." He nodded. "That is a quality I admire." When they finished, he offered her tea. She hesitated but accepted. The porcelain cup felt warm in her hands as they sat in the quiet, the sound of distant rain tapping the glass. "Do you ever wish to travel?" Lina Adrian asked. She looked up, surprised. "Travel, yes," he said. "You speak beautifully. I imagine you would enjoy seeing the world whose languages you study." Her smile was small but wistful. "I used to dream of it. Paris, London, maybe New York. But dreams are expensive." He watched her for a moment, then said softly, "Sometimes the world finds ways to pay you back for your sincerity." She laughed lightly, unsure what to say. "That sounds like something from a story." "Perhaps," he said. "But sometimes stories begin in places like this." Just then the intercom on the wall crackled. The hotel manager's voice came through, urgent. "Mr. Cole, the regional director, has arrived for your meeting." Adrian stood slipping on his jacket. "Thank you, Miss Vermeer. You have been more helpful than you know." Lina gathered her things quickly. "You are welcome, sir." He paused by the door. "Will you be here tomorrow?" "Yes," she said almost shyly. "Every morning at 8. "Good," he said with a small smile. "Then I will see you again." After he left, she stood for a long moment, staring at the rain streaking down the tall window panes. Something in his words stayed with her, the way he spoke about sincerity, as if it were a treasure. She had never met anyone like him, powerful, yes, but gentle, curious, almost lonely. That evening she stopped by the pharmacy as usual. The cashier counted the coins carefully. The bills barely covered the total. As she stepped out into the drizzle, her phone buzzed with a message from the hotel's internal app. "Staff announcement tomorrow morning, at 9 in the ballroom. Attendance required." She thought little of it. Big meetings rarely concerned people like her. But the next morning the lobby buzzed louder than usual. Uniforms crisp, badges polished. Everyone whispered about new ownership. Lina stood at the back of the ballroom with the other maids as the general manager took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "it is my honor to introduce the man who will oversee our hotel's future partnership, Mr. Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Capital Group." The applause filled the room. Lina's breath caught. Her eyes searched the stage, and there he was, standing beneath the bright lights, calm and confident, speaking to the crowd with ease. She felt the air leave her lungs. The kind man who listened to her translations, who wrote her that note, was not just a guest, he was the owner. As his speech continued, Lina's mind spun. Every polite word, every smile replayed in her head. She had spoken to him like an equal, unaware of who he truly was. Her heart pounded with confusion, pride, and a strange ache of betrayal. When he finished, his gaze swept the room, and for a brief moment his eyes found hers. He smiled slightly, but she could not return it. She turned and slipped out quietly, the echo of applause fading behind her, her heart heavy with questions she did not know how to ask. Lina avoided the 7th floor for 2 days. She traded shifts with a coworker volunteered to clean the lower wings, anything to stay away from Suite 709. Every time she saw the Cole Capital logo on a memo or a delivery box, a dull sting pulsed in her chest. She told herself she should not care. He had been kind, yes, but he had also kept the truth from her. On the 3rd morning, her supervisor cornered her in the linen room. "Vermeer, Mr. Cole requested you again," she said briskly. "He asked for you by name. You cannot refuse a VIP." Lina hesitated, then nodded. There was no way out. When she knocked on the suite door, her pulse was quick and uneven. Adrian opened it himself. He looked more formal today, his suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. "Miss Vermeer," he said softly. "I wondered if you would come." She stepped inside, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I was assigned, sir." He studied her face, hearing the distance in her tone. "You have heard the news, I imagine." "Yes," she said, her voice controlled. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole." There was silence for a moment, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. "Lina," he said finally, "I did not intend to mislead you. I never meant for my position to matter between us." Her eyes lifted, steady but hurt. "You knew from the start that I was just housekeeping staff. You could have said something." "I wanted to," he admitted. "But every day I meet people who act differently once they know who I am. You were the first person in years who spoke to me like an ordinary man." Her voice trembled slightly. "Maybe because I thought you were one. That is what made it real." He exhaled, his shoulders tense. "I understand why you are upset. But what I said to you, what I felt, was genuine." Lina turned toward the window, her reflection pale in the glass. "You spoke about sincerity as if it was something you valued. But you were hiding the truth the whole time." Adrian took a step closer but stopped himself. "You are right. I should have told you. I was afraid honesty would destroy what little connection we had." "It destroyed it anyway," she said quietly. For a long moment neither spoke. The rain outside pressed against the window panes, soft but relentless. Finally, Lina picked up her cleaning cloth from the cart. "I will finish the room, sir." "You do not have to," he said gently. "I do," she answered. "It is my job." She worked in silence, wiping the tables, replacing towels, folding sheets with precise movements. He watched her, knowing there was nothing he could say to fix what was broken in that moment. When she finished, she nodded politely and turned to leave. "Good day, Mr. Cole." "Lina," he said again, his voice lower, almost pleading. "Please do not let my mistake erase what was true between us." She paused at the door but did not look back. "It already has." Then she walked out, closing the door quietly behind her. That night, Adrian stood alone by the window, the city lights shimmering below. For the first time in years, he felt something beyond control or logic, a hollow space where her presence used to be. Meanwhile, Lina sat on the edge of her bed, her sketchbook open beside her. The folded note from him still rested between the pages. She stared at the words, "Never stop using your gift." It felt different now, less like encouragement, more like irony. She closed the book and whispered to herself, "I should have known better." The following morning, the hotel buzzed with excitement. Reporters filled the lobby, and photographers gathered near the entrance. The Cole Foundation was hosting a gala to announce a new community program. Every employee was required to attend dressed in formal attire. Lina borrowed a simple black dress from her friend in reception. As she tied her hair back, her mother asked softly, "Will the man from the hotel be there?" Lina forced a smile. "He will, but it does not matter." At the ballroom, chandeliers glowed above rows of glittering tables. Guests mingled, champagne glasses in hand. Lina stood near the service entrance, ready to help if needed, doing her best to blend into the background. Then the host spoke into the microphone. "Please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Capital Group." Applause erupted. Lina looked down, her heart beating fast despite herself. Adrian took the stage, thanking the crowd with measured grace, but midway through his speech his tone changed. "There is someone here tonight," he said slowly, "who reminded me of what integrity truly means. She does not know it, but her honesty challenged me more than any board meeting ever could." The audience murmured curiously. Lina froze, realizing he was looking directly at her. He continued, "This hotel is built by many hands, but it stands strongest because of the people who serve with humility. To them, and to one in particular, I owe my gratitude." Her chest tightened. She could feel every pair of eyes shifting in her direction. She turned slightly away, hoping to disappear. But deep down she felt something she could not name, a flicker of pride, a tremor of forgiveness she was not ready to admit. As the applause began again, Adrian's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer before he stepped back from the microphone. She lowered her head, uncertain whether to walk away or stay, and listened to what the night still had to reveal. After the gala, Lina avoided Adrian again. She left the ballroom before the speeches ended and slipped quietly into the staff elevator. The sound of applause still echoed in her mind long after she reached the laundry corridor. She could not decide what hurt more, his silence before or the attention now. To her, both felt like reminders of the distance between their worlds. The following week, things returned to routine. Adrian remained at the hotel meeting with managers and investors, but he no longer called for her. Lina worked as she always had, folding towels, changing linens, pretending nothing had changed. Still, every time she passed Suite 709, she felt a faint ache behind her ribs. One afternoon, while she was dusting near the lobby staircase, Mrs. Carter approached her. Vermeer, she said, the CEO requested a translator for a small meeting with the Dutch Tourism Board. You are the only staff fluent in Dutch. He wants you there at noon. Lina's heart hesitated, but she nodded. Understood. At noon, she entered the conference room. Adrian was already seated, surrounded by polished executives and foreign representatives. His gaze flickered to her immediately. Miss Vermeer, he greeted. Thank you for assisting us. She bowed slightly. Of course, sir. Throughout the meeting, she kept her tone neutral, her translations precise. She avoided his eyes, focusing on her notes. But when one of the Dutch delegates made a joke about the loyalty of invisible workers, Adrian's expression hardened. I do not believe anyone is invisible, he said calmly. Some people simply work in places where others forget to look. Lina froze, the words catching in her throat. She realized he was speaking for her, not to her. When the meeting ended, he dismissed everyone with professional courtesy. As she gathered her papers, he spoke quietly. Lina, please wait a moment. She hesitated. Yes, Mr. Cole. I owe you another apology, he said, his voice low and sincere. Not only for keeping my identity from you, but for turning what was personal into a public moment. I never meant to embarrass you. She looked at him for the first time in days. Why do you keep saying sorry, Mr. Cole? You are a businessman. I am a cleaner. There was never anything to apologize for. That is not true, he replied. I have built my life surrounded by people who speak carefully but never honestly. You did both. You reminded me what honesty sounds like, and I cannot forget that. She wanted to believe him, but years of being overlooked had taught her to protect herself. You do not owe me anything, she said softly. Maybe not, he said, but I want to. You once said dreams are expensive. I can help you finish your studies if you will let me. Her eyes widened. That is not charity I can accept. It is not charity, he said. It is gratitude. She hesitated, her fingers clutching the folder against her chest. If I say no, then I will still admire you, he said gently, and still regret losing your trust. The room fell silent again. For a long moment, all she heard was the soft ticking of the wall clock. Then she spoke, her tone careful but kind. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, he said. That evening she walked home through the cool wind, his words echoing in her head. She passed a bookstore and stopped at the window. Inside, a display of Dutch-English dictionaries caught her eye. She imagined for the first time in years what it might feel like to study again, not because someone offered, but because she believed she could. Back in his suite, Adrian stared at the document she had translated earlier. He read her notes in the margins, neat and precise, and smiled faintly. He knew she might never accept his help, but he also knew this was not the end. Something in her honesty had already changed the direction of his life, and maybe, just maybe, their paths were not finished crossing. The next morning, Lina woke before sunrise. The sky outside her apartment was still gray, streaked with pale blue light. She brewed coffee for her mother and stood by the window, lost in thought. All night she had turned Adrian's offer over in her mind. Gratitude, he had called it, but every part of her feared what accepting it might mean. She had spent her whole life trying not to owe anyone anything. At work, she kept her focus sharp. Room after room, she moved quietly, folding sheets, scrubbing sinks, pretending that nothing in her world had shifted. But the truth was that everything had. The idea that someone as powerful as Adrian Cole saw potential in her made her uneasy and strangely hopeful at the same time. Later that afternoon, she was called to the lobby. The manager handed her an envelope with the Cole Foundation seal. "Mr. Cole asked that this be given to you personally," the woman said. Lina hesitated before opening it. Inside was a simple letter written in clean, careful handwriting. "Lina, you once said you could not afford to dream, so I am sending you a different kind of invitation. Tomorrow evening, the Cole Foundation will host a community exhibition. I would like you to attend not as staff but as my guest. You do not owe me an answer, only your presence. Adrian." Her hands trembled slightly. She had never been invited to any event that was not part of her work. Her first instinct was to decline to avoid the attention. But something about the way he phrased it as my guest made her pause. That night her mother noticed her silence over dinner. "What troubles you, sweetheart?" "Nothing," Lina said quickly, then sighed. "Someone invited me to something I do not belong to." Her mother smiled gently. "Maybe that is why you were invited to prove that you do belong." The next evening she borrowed a soft blue dress from her neighbor, pressed it carefully, and tied her hair in a simple braid. When she arrived at the hotel's grand ballroom, she almost turned back at the door. The space glowed with golden light and quiet music. Guests in evening wear chatted beside art displays and photographs mounted on glass panels. Then she saw the sign above the central exhibit, "The Art of Everyday Voices." Her heart skipped. The caption beneath it read, "Inspired by stories of unseen workers who keep our cities alive." Adrian appeared beside her, dressed in a dark suit, his tone warm but steady. "I hoped you would come." She looked around, still stunned. "You did this." "It was a team effort," he said. "But the idea came from something you said: the world forgets people who do the quiet work. I wanted to change that." Her eyes softened. "You remembered that I remember everything you say," he replied simply. "This exhibition is open to the public. All proceeds will go toward scholarships for vocational and language students, including one with your name on it." Lina's breath caught. "Adrian, I told you I cannot accept charity." He smiled faintly. "Then do not think of it as charity. Think of it as a promise to someone who reminded me that kindness still matters." For a long moment, she could not speak. Around them, guests admired photographs of janitors, cooks, and cleaners, portraits that shimmered with quiet dignity. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Then do not say anything," he said softly. "Just see what you inspired." The music swelled gently in the background. Lina felt tears sting her eyes as she looked at the exhibit again. For the first time she saw her own reflection among those images, ordinary people not invisible but seen. When she turned to thank him, he was already greeting a group of guests. Yet even across the room she felt his gaze find hers again. This time it held no secrets, only sincerity. And for the first time she allowed herself to smile back. When the exhibition ended, the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving the ballroom filled with the soft murmur of staff cleaning up and the fading echo of music. Lina remained near the photographs, still overwhelmed. Each portrait on the wall carried quiet strength, the same kind of dignity she had seen in her co-workers for years. For the first time she felt proud to stand among them. Adrian approached her as the last guests were leaving. He loosened his tie slightly, his expression gentler than she had ever seen. "You stayed," he said. She nodded. "I wanted to see the end of it." "I'm glad," he replied. "I was not sure if you would come at all." "I almost did not," she admitted. "But then I thought, maybe I should see for myself whether your words meant anything." "And now?" he asked quietly. Lina looked around the room at the glowing panels, at the small plaque bearing her name beneath the scholarship list. "Now I believe they do." Adrian exhaled, slowly, relief flickering across his face. "I meant every word, Lina. You changed how I see this place, how I see people." Her eyes softened, but remained cautious. "It still feels strange. You live in a world far above mine. I do not know where I fit in it. You do not have to fit into my world," he said. "Maybe we can build a space that belongs to both of us." She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not want to be another name on your list of projects." He stepped closer, but his tone stayed calm, respectful. "You are not a project. You are the reason I stopped living like everything was a transaction." For a moment neither spoke. The lights dimmed slightly as hotel staff began turning off chandeliers one by one. In that fading glow, something fragile yet real lingered between them. Lina finally said, "I do not know what this is, Adrian, but I know it cannot start with me feeling like I owe you." He nodded slowly. "Then let us start differently. No favors, no debts, only honesty." She met his gaze, seeing no pretense there, only quiet sincerity. "That is all I ever wanted," she said softly. Adrian smiled, small but genuine. "Then that is where we begin." As she walked out into the cool night air, the city lights reflected off the canal like scattered stars. Her steps felt lighter than they had in years. Behind her, through the tall glass windows of the ballroom, Adrian stood watching her go, hands in his pockets, a look of quiet hope on his face. Neither of them knew where this would lead, but for the first time their paths no longer felt divided by status or distance, only connected by truth. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of Lina's days began to change. She still worked at the hotel, but her tasks shifted. Adrian had quietly arranged for her to assist the communications department, part-time, helping translate international correspondence. It was not a promotion she had asked for, but one that respected her skill. Every day she balanced her housekeeping hours with her new role, feeling a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. Her mother noticed the difference first. "You smile more when you come home," she said one evening. "Did something good happen?" Lina poured tea into 2 small cups and sat beside her. "I think something is happening, but I do not know what to call it yet." Her mother chuckled softly. "Maybe it is hope." At the hotel, the staff whispered less now when she passed. They had seen her name on the scholarship list and respected her for it. She worked hard, never taking advantage of her connection with Adrian. And yet every time she saw him at meetings at the cafe, walking through the lobby, there was a quiet exchange of glances that carried more warmth than words ever could. One afternoon she found a note on her desk in the communications office. It was written on the same paper he had used before. "Lina, there is a new art gallery opening across the canal tonight. They feature young local photographers. Would you join me? No titles, no business. Just 2 people who enjoy stories told in pictures. A." She read the note twice before tucking it into her bag. That evening, as the city lights shimmered across the water, she walked to the small gallery on the corner. Adrian was already there, dressed simply in a dark coat. "You came," he said, his eyes lighting up. "I promised I would try to see the world differently," she replied. Inside, the gallery was intimate and warm, filled with photographs of ordinary people, street vendors, fishermen, musicians. They walked slowly, side by side, speaking in low voices about the images. "Do you ever think about how many stories go unnoticed?" Adrian asked quietly. "All the time," Lina said. "But maybe they are not unnoticed. Maybe they are just waiting for someone to listen." He looked at her for a long moment. "That is exactly what you taught me." The silence between them was comfortable, now filled with mutual understanding. When the last guests left, they stepped outside into the crisp night air. The wind carried the faint sound of a street performer's violin. Lina turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "You have a strange way of keeping promises." Adrian smiled. "How so?" "You said no debts, no favors. Yet somehow you keep finding ways to help me." He shook his head lightly. "I am not helping you. I am walking beside you. There is a difference." She looked down the corners of her mouth, lifting slightly. "Then maybe I can walk beside you too." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her a small wrapped package. "Open it when you get home," he said. She frowned playfully. "You are breaking your own rule again." "Not this time," he said. "It is not a gift. It is a reminder." Later that night in her apartment, she unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a sleek new translation dictionary bound in blue leather. Tucked inside the first page was a handwritten note. "For the words you have not yet spoken and the dreams you have not yet translated." Lina pressed her hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. It was not about money or charity. It was about belief, something she had long stopped giving herself permission to feel. Outside, the city shimmered quietly, and somewhere across the canal, Adrian stood on his balcony looking toward the same horizon. Both of them, for the first time, were learning how to speak the language of sincerity. Spring came quietly to Amsterdam. The canals shimmered beneath the soft morning light, tulips brightening the streets with color. Lina walked through the hotel courtyard, her bag filled with language textbooks and notes from her new evening classes. She was now officially enrolled in a translation program funded by the scholarship from the Cole Foundation, but on paper, She had earned it through merit, not pity. Adrian had made sure of that. Every few days they met for coffee near the art district. There were no more formal titles, no lines drawn by hierarchy. They spoke about ordinary things, her studies, his plans to shift the company toward social initiatives, and the meaning of building something real. It felt natural, like friendship blooming into something neither had to define too soon. One Sunday afternoon, as they walked along the canal, a street artist stopped them. "Would you like a sketch together?" he asked. Adrian smiled and glanced at Lina. She hesitated, then nodded. The artist worked quickly, his charcoal strokes capturing the two of them standing side by side, her hair lifted slightly by the breeze, his hand resting gently near hers. When the sketch was done, the artist handed it to Lina. She stared at it for a long moment, then laughed softly. "You look too serious," she teased. "Maybe because I was trying not to ruin the moment," Adrian said. She rolled the paper carefully and tucked it into her bag. Then, "Let us promise not to forget it." He looked at her, the sunlight reflecting in his eyes. "I will not. You were the mistake that turned out right." Lina smiled, the words echoing in her heart. "And you were the stranger who taught me that sincerity is its own kind of wealth." They continued walking, the city alive around them, yet everything felt still. Two people who had met by accident, choosing this time to walk the same path on purpose. As they reached the bridge, Adrian switched languages deliberately, his Dutch accent slow but clear. "Mag ik gemenemen op een echte date?" Lina laughed softly, answering in English. "Only if you keep speaking my language." The wind carried their laughter over the water as the camera of life pulled wide, capturing the reflection of two unlikely souls no longer bound by status, but by choice, by honesty, and by love.